What I am about to share with you takes less than 5 minutes to do. You can do it today or tomorrow morning or before the week is out. It requires one plant, one specific plant that you can find in almost any market or garden center for a few dollars. And when you place it, not casually, not decoratively, but with the exact intention and in the exact location I am going to describe, something begins to shift in the spiritual atmosphere of your kitchen. Not in a month, not after a year of careful practice. Within days, many families who have applied this with precision report the first unmistakable signs of movement in areas of their financial life that had felt sealed and static for a very long time. I want to be very clear with you about what I am not saying. I am not saying this plant is magic. I am not saying it will produce a windfall. I am not giving you permission to place a plant on your windowsill and sit back and expect heaven to do the rest. What I am saying is precise. The Torah, the foundational text of Jewish wisdom, studied and applied for more than 3,000 years, names this specific herb in direct connection with the purification and restoration of blessing in the household. That connection was not decorative. It was not metaphorical. It was encoded deliberately by teachers who understood something about the relationship between the physical world and the spiritual architecture underlying it that most of us have entirely forgotten. This knowledge was never designed for public broadcast. For generations it circulated within households, passed from mothers to daughters, from teachers to students in private study. The specific herb, the specific placement, the specific words spoken at the moment of placement. I have made the decision to release it here because I have watched too many families sit in unnecessary financial stagnation while this simple, ancient, accessible practice gathers dust in the tradition and no one speaks it aloud. My name is Rabbi Naomi. I have spent over 3 decades at the intersection of ancient Jewish wisdom and the practical architecture of household prosperity. My lineage is not academic. My grandmother kept this herb in her kitchen in Haifa without ever explaining why. It was simply what was done. No ceremony around it, no announcement. It sat in its place the way a mezuzah sits on a doorpost, quietly, consistently, as a matter of course. It took me 20 years of serious study to understand the full depth of what she was practicing every single day without fanfare or explanation. What she knew in her hands and her habits, I eventually found encoded in the texts she never read. The same knowledge arriving from 2 different directions, meeting in the same place. I am going to give you that depth today. Stay with me until the very end. The placement instruction, where in the kitchen, how high, which direction it faces, and the specific words spoken, all of it matters. If you place the plant without the intention, you have a plant. If you place it with the full protocol I am going to share, you have something else entirely. Before we continue, I want you to drop a comment right now. Tell me your biggest financial obstacle in this season of your life. Just name it. 1 sentence is enough. The act of naming what is blocking you is not weakness. In the tradition, naming a thing is the first step in releasing it. Write it below. I read every comment, and what you write may shape what I teach in a future video, because the questions of this community guide where this wisdom goes next. Now let me tell you what is actually happening in most households. And I want you to hear this not as criticism, but as a diagnosis. The kind of gentle, precise diagnosis a physician gives when they finally identify the root of something that has been misread for years. Most kitchens in the modern world are energetically chaotic. Not dirty, not badly organized, chaotic in a spiritual sense. They are spaces where financial stress is discussed loudly and often, where food is prepared with distraction and anxiety running beneath every action, where the television runs during meals and the phone is checked between bites, and the conversation circles back again and again to what is not working, what cannot be paid, what the future looks like when you are afraid to look at it directly. The kitchen has become a pass-through, a functional room, a utility, nothing more. Consider what that means. The room where your family's nourishment is created. The room where raw becomes ready, where the earth's provision becomes the family's sustenance, has been stripped of its sacred character and turned into a backdrop for anxiety. That is not a small thing. That is the altar being treated as a counter. And a desecrated altar does not function the way an honored one does. This is the problem. And it is costing families more than they realize. Because in the Jewish tradition, and this is not poetic language, this is structural teaching from the sages, the kitchen is not just a room where food is prepared, it is the altar of the household. The place where the raw material of life is transformed into nourishment, and the energy of that transformation extends far beyond the physical food that leaves it. A kitchen that is spiritually alive, tended with intention, carrying the frequency of gratitude and provision, becomes a source of abundance that radiates through the entire household economy. A kitchen that is spiritually depleted becomes, over time, a leak in the vessel. The provision that should be flowing through the family begins to thin, not because of bad decisions, because the altar has been abandoned. Every day this continues without correction. The household is operating below its spiritual capacity. The channel is narrowing, and the narrowing is invisible, which is why most families never connect it to what they see in their financial life. The root cause is what the ancient teachers called tumah, a state of spiritual blockage or impurity that accumulates not from sin, but from neglect. From the slow forgetting of what certain spaces are for, from the gradual displacement of sacred intention by the noise of modern life. Tumah is not a moral judgment. It is not a mark against you. It is a diagnostic term, the way a doctor uses the word inflammation, not to blame the body, but to name what is happening so it can be addressed precisely. It describes the condition in which the channel between the spiritual source of provision and the physical household has become obstructed. The water is still there above, the blessing has not been withdrawn, but the pipe is narrowed, and what arrives at the household is a fraction of what was released toward it. The Torah is precise about how this obstruction is cleared. It does not require grand gestures. It does not require elaborate ceremony or expensive materials or years of preparation. It requires one specific act of restoration, performed with exactness and intention. And at the center of that act, named explicitly in the text, used by priests and kings and ordinary families alike, is the herb Ezov. Ezov, translated in most English Bibles as hyssop, a small, modest, aromatic plant, wild-growing, easy to find, inexpensive, unremarkable to look at. And yet the Torah names it more than a dozen times, not incidentally, not as background detail, but as the central instrument in some of the most consequential moments in the tradition's history of divine intervention. In the book of Leviticus, hyssop is central to the purification rite for the restoration of a person, a home, and a community that has fallen into a state of spiritual blockage. The priest does not use an elaborate object. He does not use something rare or costly. He uses ezoph, this humble, widely available herb, because the tradition understood that the power was never in the rarity of the instrument. It was in the precision of the intention behind it. In the account of the first Passover, the night an entire people passed from bondage into provision, from slavery into the covenant of abundance, the hyssop branch is the instrument used to mark the doorposts. Not a sword, not gold, a plant, applied by hand to the threshold of each household, the signal to heaven that this home is under protection, that this family is aligned with divine favor and ready to receive what is being released. In the Psalms, when King David calls out in his most desperate moment of spiritual depletion, "Purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean. Wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow," he is not speaking about ritual hygiene. He is speaking about the restoration of his capacity to receive blessing. He is naming the specific instrument by which the channel between the human and the divine is cleared. He knew exactly what he was asking for. The sages who studied these passages across centuries arrived at a principle that became embedded in the daily practice of traditional Jewish households. Hyssop, placed with intention in the kitchen, acts as what the Kabbalah calls a segulah, a spiritually activated object, a key that corresponds to a specific lock in the structure of divine provision. It does not create abundance from nothing. It removes the obstruction that has been preventing what was always meant to flow from actually arriving. The water was always there. The channel was narrowed. Ease off restores the width. This is the root. This is why it works. And now I am going to tell you exactly how to do it. The herb you are looking for is hyssop, Hyssopus officinalis. Not lavender, which is sometimes confused with it because of the similar flower color. Not thyme, which shares the same botanical family, but carries a different energetic signature in the tradition. Hyssop specifically. It has small, narrow, dark green leaves, grows in a low, bushy form, and produces small purple-blue flowers when it blooms. The scent is clean and slightly medicinal, camphor-like, warm, unmistakable once you know it. You can find it at most plant nurseries, at specialty herb stores, and increasingly in the herb sections of larger garden centers. In some areas, you can find it fresh cut at farmers' markets in the growing season. If you have difficulty locating it locally, dried hyssop from a reputable source can carry the intention, but the living plant is always preferred by the tradition. A living plant is a living channel, a channel that breathes, that grows, that changes with the seasons, that responds to tending, is more open than one that has been cut and dried. If you can place something alive, place something alive. Once you have the plant, there are 4 elements to the placement protocol. Each one matters. None of them are interchangeable. The first element is location. The hyssop must be placed in the kitchen, not near the kitchen, not on the windowsill of an adjacent room, but within the kitchen itself, within the space where food is prepared and transformed. The specific placement within the kitchen is on the eastern side, if you can identify it, or failing that, the side closest to where the primary light enters the room. The ancient teachers associated the east with the direction of divine overflow, the direction from which blessing enters. You are not decorating. You are positioning a spiritual instrument in the precise location where it can receive what is available and direct it into the household. The second element is height. The plant must be placed at or above counter height, never on the floor, never low. In the tradition, things placed low signal submission and closure. Things placed at the level of the hands, the working level, the level of provision and craft, signal readiness to receive and to act. The hyssop at counter height or above says to the spiritual architecture of the space, this household is prepared, it is upright, it is open. The third element is the first watering. When you place the hyssop in its location for the first time, you water it immediately, not later that day, at the moment of placement, and as you water it, you speak 3 things aloud. First, the name of your household, the family name, or if you live alone, your own name, spoken as a declaration of ownership and identity. Second, a specific request, not vague, not "I want more money," but something specific, the restoration of a blocked channel, the opening of a specific door, the resolution of a specific financial difficulty. The tradition teaches that a request spoken at the moment of planting carries a weight that a request spoken at any other time does not. You are planting an intention alongside the plant. Third, a word of gratitude for what has already been given, even one thing, even something small, because the channel of gratitude must be open for the channel of provision to follow. The fourth element is ongoing tending. This is where most people, if they hear a version of this and try to apply it casually, miss the entire point. The hyssop is not a one-time placement. It is a living practice. It must be watered consistently. It must be spoken to, not at length, not with elaborate ritual, but acknowledged, seen. When you pass it in the morning, say something to it. In the tradition of my grandmother's household, she would touch the leaves every morning as she passed and say in Yiddish, "Grow well, we need you strong." 7 words, every morning, without fail. And here is the spiritual mechanics of why that matters. In the Kabbalistic framework, all living things respond to attention. Attention is a form of energy. An energy directed consistently at a living channel strengthens that channel's capacity to transmit. When you tend the hyssop daily, water, touch, spoken acknowledgement, you are not performing superstition. You are maintaining the instrument. You are keeping the segula alive through the daily act of relationship. A plant that is placed and then ignored is just a plant. A plant that is tended and spoken to and woven into the daily rhythm of the household becomes something the tradition would recognize as an activated channel of spiritual alignment. The difference between the two is not the plant. It is the consistency of your attention to it. That consistency, that daily acknowledgement of the living presence you have placed in your home, is what activates the segula over time and keeps it working month after month. What you are building over the course of weeks is a living altar point in your kitchen, a place of intention within the room where provision is prepared. And what I have observed in families who have practiced this with precision, not laziness, not approximation, but exactness, is that within 2 to 4 weeks, the kitchen itself changes. Something in the atmosphere shifts. Meals taste different, people say. Conversations around the table become lighter. A quality of ease enters the room that was not there before, and members of the household begin to notice it without being able to name it. Then, usually quietly, usually without fanfare, something in the financial life of the household begins to move. An invoice gets paid that had been sitting for months. A client relationship that had gone cold reactivates. An unexpected line of income appears from a direction no one had been looking. A conversation that had been stuck for a long time resolves in an afternoon. I am not promising any of these things. I am describing what I have observed in household after household across many years of practice when this instruction is applied with the precision and the faith that the tradition requires. The channel opens at its own pace, but it opens. Now let me give you the immediate action plan. This week, not next month, not when you get around to it, but within the next 7 days, you are going to locate a living hyssop plant. You are going to identify the eastern side of your kitchen, or the side where light enters first. You are going to place the hyssop there at counter height or above. You are going to water it immediately upon placement, speaking your household name, your specific request, and one expression of genuine gratitude. And then you are going to tend it every day. Touch the leaves, say something to it. 3 seconds, 7 words, every morning. You are not looking in the first week for a dramatic financial event. You are looking for a sign of life, a feeling in the kitchen that something has changed, a quality of ease in a room that perhaps carried tension before, a conversation around the table that goes differently than conversations have been going. These are the first fruits. Acknowledge them, name them out loud, because the tradition teaches that acknowledged blessing grows and unacknowledged blessing retreats. Do not let the first movement pass without receiving it consciously. In 4 weeks, look back. Note what has shifted in the financial atmosphere of your household. Not just the numbers, the feeling, the frequency, the quality of provision that is arriving, even in small amounts. That shift is the channel opening. And an open channel, maintained with consistency, carries more over time than any single dramatic event ever could. What I have shared with you today is one piece of a complete household prosperity system drawn from the ancient tradition. The hyssop practice addresses the kitchen, the altar of the house, but the full architecture covers every room, every threshold, every daily and weekly rhythm that either opens or closes the channels of provision in your household. The complete program, the Prosperity Covenant, is assembled from 4 decades of my study, application, and direct work with families across 3 continents. The link is below this video. If what you heard today resonated in you as more than information, if it landed as something you already knew but had not been told, then the next step is there waiting for you. Do not let the clarity you are feeling right now pass without acting on it. Clarity at the right moment is itself a form of provision. Honor it. Now I want to prepare you for what is coming, because the test will arrive, and I want you to be standing when it does. Within the first week of placing this herb, sometimes within the first day or 2, something will happen that makes the practice feel foolish. A bill will arrive unexpectedly. A financial conversation will go poorly. Someone in your household will look at the plant and say something dismissive. And a voice inside you will say, "This is superstition. This is too small a thing to matter. This cannot possibly be connected to anything real." I want you to recognize that voice for exactly what it is. In the tradition, it is called the Yetzer Hara, the contracting force, the inclination toward closure. It arrives at the precise moment when a channel is beginning to open, because that is when it is most threatened. The plant you placed is doing exactly what it is supposed to do. The field is being prepared. What you are feeling is not evidence of failure. It is evidence that something is being disturbed. And what is being disturbed is the blockage itself. Stay with the practice. Do not remove the plant. Do not stop the morning acknowledgement. The test of any vessel is whether it holds its shape under pressure. The families I have watched pass through this first test are consistently the ones who experience what tends to follow. Not a miracle, not a transformation, but a direction. A changed direction. And direction held long enough produces a destination that the closed channel could never have reached. Do not speak defeat over what has not yet fully opened. The hyssop is growing. The intention is planted. Give it the same patience you would give any living thing you have committed to tending. Now, tell me in the comments what your biggest financial obstacle is in this season. Just name it. You do not need to explain it or justify it. Name the thing that feels most blocked right now. Naming it is the first act of releasing it. I read every comment, and what you write there is seen, by me, and in the tradition's understanding, by something larger than either of us. If you are not yet subscribed, press the button now and turn on the notification bell. Next week, I am releasing something that very few people outside certain Sephardic families have ever been taught. A specific prayer, spoken at a specific time of day, that the ancient teachers connected directly to the opening of Parnassah, the channel of livelihood. It has never been on this channel before. If the bell is not on, you will not know when it arrives. And if this teaching reached something in you today, if something in your chest moved, if something in you recognized this before your mind had finished processing it, press the like button before you leave. Every time you press it, this video travels further. Someone out there right now is standing in a kitchen that feels heavy with financial worry, looking for exactly what you just found. Be the reason it reaches them. May your kitchen become what it was always meant to be, the living altar of a household that provision recognizes and enters without hesitation. May the herb you place there grow strong and upright, a signal to heaven that this family is tended, intentional, and open to receive. May what has been blocked in your household find its release this week, and may the channel that opens carry blessing in both directions, toward you and through you, to everyone whose life your flourishing touches. Shalom.